Hi, welcome to Future Technos. So today we're diving into something that's been creating quite a buzz in the camera world. Stephen Nikon says that this is the cool camera, and I think a lot of you are curious to know whether that's true or just marketing talk. What we're looking at here is the Nikon ZF. You might remember the Nikon ZFC, which was a crop sensor retro-style camera that caught a lot of attention because of its looks. Well, this one takes it a step further. The Nikon ZF is a full-frame retro camera, and in this video, we're going to walk through all of its features, the specs, the design, the shooting experience, the sample images, and most importantly, whether it's really worth getting over something like the ZFC or even other cameras in Nikon's lineup. Now let's get one thing clear before we go too far. The model I had my hands on was labeled as a pre-production unit. Strangely enough, even though it shows firmware 1.0, Nikon still insists on calling it pre-production. Why? Because that gives them an excuse. If anything doesn't work right, they can always say, oh, well, it was a pre-production model. Personally, I don't fully buy that explanation, but fine. Let's just roll with it. That's also the reason I won't call this a review. Instead, consider it more of a hands-on experience and breakdown of what I noticed when using it. Nikon only had one ZF available for me to test, and normally I'd want a second one so Steven could film me shooting with the same camera. That way we could really show off the sample footage in action, but because Nikon didn't provide us with that option, Steven ended up filming me with our Canon R5, which is our usual choice for run-and-gun setups. So, to be clear, you're not going to see sample video straight from the ZF in this first look. What you will see are stills I captured while testing it. Speaking of testing, it wasn't exactly a long session. I only got about an hour with the ZF. We headed into the park with a brother and sister as models. They did a fantastic job, and I made the most of that limited time. It's worth mentioning, though, that compared to other brands, Nikon makes it much harder to test their gear in advance. Other companies will often send us cameras weeks before launch, and we can really dig in. With Nikon, you're lucky if you get an hour. That's just the way they operate, but it does mean this experience is more of a first impression than a deep, long-term test. Now, here's something important. At this point, RAW support isn't available for the ZF, so what I did was shoot RAW plus JPEG. That way, I'll be able to edit the RAWs later once support is added. But for now, the images you'll see are JPEGs, and honestly, they looked surprisingly good straight out of the camera. I still edited them with my FroPack 4 presets to give them a polished look, but the base files were already solid, which tells me Nikon has done something right with its color science here. Let's talk about the body and design. Nikon styled the ZF after the classic Nikon FM2, which explains the retro feel. If you're holding it in your hands, the first thing you'll notice is that it feels much more premium than the ZFC. The ZFC looked metal, but in reality, it was lighter and a little less solid since it was a crop sensor lower-priced model. The ZF, by comparison, feels sturdy. It has that dense, metal-like build that just makes you think, okay, this is a serious camera. The dials are tactile, the buttons are placed well, and overall, it gives a great first impression, until you start paying attention to the grip. And this is where things get tricky. The grip is frankly uncomfortable. It's almost non-existent. Shooting horizontally is manageable, but as soon as I turned the camera for vertical shots, my hand cramped. There just isn't enough to hold onto. Nikon clearly prioritized the retro look over modern ergonomics here. And while it might look great on a shelf or hanging from your neck, using it for long sessions isn't as pleasant. Ergonomics matter, and we've had decades of camera design evolution to get grips right. It's a shame that retro styling had to compromise comfort. Now, there is a solution, but it's not from Nikon directly. Nikon actually worked with SmallRig to create an additional grip. And while it does improve handling a lot, I don't think it should have been necessary in the first place. Nikon should have just designed a better grip from the start. Still, if you buy this camera, I'd say get the SmallRig grip on day one. It doesn't add features, it just makes the body much more comfortable to hold. For me, that's a no-brainer. So why did Nikon even make this? Their answer is simple: the cool factor. They saw how popular the ZFC was, mostly because of the retro vibe and the dials, and they decided to bring that same idea to full frame. Nikon says people enjoy cameras that have physical dials and an old-school design, so the ZF is their way of giving customers that option. And yes, it looks cool. But the bigger question is Did Nikon prioritize the right thing here? Because a lot of shooters were expecting the Z6 III before a retro body like this. It's fair to wonder if Nikon's attention is in the right place. Now let's move into the specs. Inside the ZF is a 24.5 megapixel full-frame sensor, the same resolution you'll find in the Z6 II and also the original Z6. But don't write it off as old tech just yet, because Nikon paired it with the newer X-Speed 7 processor. That's the same processor found in higher-end bodies like the Z8 and Z9. So while the sensor is familiar, the processing power behind it is much more advanced. That means better autofocus, faster shooting speeds, and overall more refined image quality. And here's something interesting. The ZF includes a dedicated switch on top that lets you go straight into black and white mode. Flip it, and your viewfinder immediately changes to monochrome. You get 2 different black and white styles to choose from. If you shoot JPEG, that decision is baked into the file, and you can't go back to color later. But if you're shooting RAW, you still have all the flexibility in post to change your mind. It's a small feature, but it speaks directly to the retro theme of this camera. People who like the old-school vibe often like shooting in black and white. The electronic viewfinder is the same 3.69 million dot panel Nikon has used in other models. It's bright, it's sharp, and it does its job really well. Paired with the 3.2-inch vari-angle touchscreen on the back, which has 2.1 million dots, you get a nice, modern shooting experience despite the camera's old-school look. And yes, the fully articulating screen is a first for Nikon full-frame cameras. That alone could hint at what's to come in the next generations of their bodies. For ISO, you're looking at a native range of 100 to 64,000. That's a step up from the Z6 II, which topped out at 51,200. As for speed, the ZF is no slouch. With the mechanical shutter, you get 11 frames per second in RAW and up to 14 in JPEG. In my testing, I actually squeezed out slightly more, 12 RAW and 15 JPEG per second. And if you're willing to use the electronic shutter, you can push it all the way to 30 frames per second in JPEG. But keep in mind, that comes with rolling shutter issues, so it's not something I'd recommend for fast-moving subjects.